Not anything is art. In 1917, Marcel Duchamp declared anything is art after he entered a urinal into an exhibition under the fake name of R. Mutt, and it was rejected because the judges decided that by definition it was not a work of art, since it was an existing object. With this, he began the Dada, a movement that questioned long-held assumptions of what art should be. But what did Duchamp mean by this? We don't really know. Some people think that Duchamp was mocking the system that had confined art to certain accepted norms and definitions. Other people think it was a statement about the art market and the commodification of art. Either way, this piece opened up a huge discussion about what can be considered art. Today, I'm not going to go too deep into art theory. I'm going to express my own opinions on this topic. What is needed for something to be considered art? Well, I believe that first of all, beauty. There are two sources that I would recommend. One of them is a book called On Beauty by Ellen Scarry, and the other one is a documentary film by Roger Scruton called Why Beauty Matters. Scruton argues that in a world full of utility, we have devalued beauty, not realizing that this is actually what gives meaning to our lives. And art, more than anything, should aim to be meaningful in some sort of way. Not in the sense that every artwork should have some deep conceptual mystery hidden in it, but in the sense that it should impact the audience. One of the things that Scarry says that I really like is that beauty is the only thing that is selfless, meaning that for a moment or for a longer period of time, it can totally shift our focus from ourselves to another someone or something. And I think that that's part of where artistic meaning lies. Every artist should strive to have their work impact the audience in this sort of way, where people will pay attention to the artwork not because of the artist's promotion of his own work, but because of the beauty in the work itself. And I'm not necessarily talking about the conventional beauty standards, but perhaps even seeing beauty in places that normally people wouldn't look for something beautiful. For example, Rembrandt, he painted many portraits of older people. However, today we consider these portraits full of beauty because of the way he captured the faces. The second thing that I believe is absolutely necessary for something to be considered art is skill. Aristotle believed that technical skill and craftsmanship were important aspects of art. In his writings on aesthetics, he emphasized the need for artists to master their craft in order to effectively communicate their ideas and emotions. In the same way that we learn grammar in order to be able to communicate effectively through writing, we need to learn artistic grammar in order to be able to communicate effectively through art. Now, this is where it gets tricky. The artwork itself doesn't necessarily have to show skill, but the artist must have skill. All the artists that we hold in such high regard today for their innovation, such as Picasso, Matisse, or Monet, they were all excellent artists in terms of technique. For example, this is a portrait that Picasso made when he was only 15 years old, and this is a still life drawn by Matisse. Even Kandinsky, who's known for his colorful mix of lines and shapes, was an absolutely excellent painter before he developed his unique art theory. And just to mention, Marcel Duchamp certainly knew how to draw very well. His early works reflect his skill and training as a draftsman. Before he became known for his conceptual art and ready-mades, Duchamp was highly skilled in traditional techniques. So, does that mean that only an artist who has skill can actually be considered an artist? Yes, just like only writers who actually know grammar are considered to be writers, or singers who actually know how to use their voice are considered to be singers, not just anyone who likes to sing. And this is actually really good because skill is not a talent, which means that you can practice it and develop it. It's not something given. This brings me to my next point, which is that art must be accessible and understandable to all. Leo Tolstoy argued that art should be universally accessible. It should not be limited to an intellectual or an elite class, but should be understood and appreciated by all people, regardless of their background. He believed that art is not something that requires special training or knowledge to appreciate, but that it should connect directly to humanity in a simple way. Now, just to clarify, he's not saying that the artist should not have training and special skill in order to make art. He's saying that the audience don't necessarily have to have training or skill in order to appreciate the work of the artist. And unfortunately, this is a lot of what we see with contemporary art. There will be people who say, if you're not able to appreciate a certain piece of work, then you haven't reached a certain level of artistic knowledge or artistic interpretation. With that said, I believe it's a disrespect and a mockery to our predecessors to draw a blob on a piece of paper and call that art. It's a mockery to Leonardo da Vinci, who left us the Vitruvian Man, which shows the ideal proportions for the human body. And before him, artists used to draw like this. Michelangelo, who made many dissections of the human body to study out muscles, bones, and anatomical structures, and left us the sculpture of David. Rembrandt and Vermeer, who studied out light and came up with the chiaroscuro technique, an excellent tool for us to use as artists to convey the contrast between light and dark. Artists before us worked so hard to figure out proportions, color mixing, color creating, all of that for us today to say, that's trash, I don't really need that. Our generation wants to learn things quick. And that's the thing with art, it's a skill, and you need to put in those hours of practice to call yourself an artist. Why do you think that people should value your work if you haven't put in the hours? Artist who maybe doesn't have that much skill, but is taking the time and putting in the effort to learn the basics, is much more of an artist than someone who calls himself an artist, but doesn't necessarily take the time to learn the basics, no matter how famous or recognized they are. Now, again, I think intentionally manipulating the rules of art, like the masters did, is different, because before coming up with their own personal style, they knew the rules very well. But saying, I don't really need to know the rules and I can paint whatever and however I want, is just arrogant. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope that it wasn't too controversial. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more content like this.